The evening sun cast long shadows across Teacher Moses's compound when he called his family together. His wife Grace sat with their 3 children, David, Victoria, and young Emmanuel. The air felt heavy with unspoken tension. "I have something important to tell you all," Moses announced, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Grace's hands trembled as she served the evening meal. Something in her husband's tone made her stomach twist. "I'm taking a second wife." The words hit like lightning. Grace's plate crashed to the ground. Victoria gasped, covering her mouth. David jumped to his feet, eyes blazing with disbelief. Little Emmanuel started crying. "Moses, what are you saying?" Grace whispered, her voice barely audible. The compound suddenly felt too small. Neighbors' voices drifted from nearby houses, they had heard everything. The family that once laughed together now sat in stunned silence. Moses straightened his shoulders, avoiding his wife's desperate gaze. "Her name is Caroline. She'll be joining us next week." Grace's world crumbled in that single moment. 20 years of marriage, 3 children, countless struggles overcome together, all reduced to this shocking declaration. The question burned in everyone's mind: who was this mysterious Caroline? Caroline arrived on a Tuesday morning like a storm dressed in silk. Young, beautiful, with curves that commanded attention and a smile that promised trouble. She couldn't be older than 25, younger than Moses's eldest child. "Good morning, Mama Grace," Caroline said, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she knelt before the older woman. "I come in peace. I hope we can be sisters." Grace forced a smile, her heart breaking with every word. The children watched from the doorway, whispering among themselves. Victoria's eyes burned with anger. David clenched his fists. Even little Emmanuel sensed something was wrong. Moses beamed with pride, introducing Caroline to the neighbors who had gathered to witness the drama. She played her role perfectly, humble, respectful, calling him "my lord" with exaggerated reverence. But as evening fell and the crowd dispersed, Caroline stepped into the backyard and pulled out her phone. "Hello." "Yes, it's me," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "Phase 1 is complete. The old man is completely under my spell. Give me 3 months, 6 at most, and everything will be ours." She ended the call and smiled wickedly. This wasn't about love. This was business. The children had heard everything. The once peaceful home became a battlefield within days. Moses defended Caroline with the passion of a man half his age, while Grace struggled to maintain peace. The children openly showed their displeasure, creating tension that crackled like electricity. "Why can't you accept her?" Moses shouted at Grace one evening. "She respects me. She appreciates me." Grace bit her tongue, watching her husband transform into a stranger. Caroline sat nearby, filing her nails with a satisfied smirk. Victoria refused to greet Caroline. David avoided mealtimes when she was present. Emmanuel cried whenever Caroline tried to touch him. The family dinners that once brought joy now felt like funeral gatherings. While cleaning Moses's study one afternoon, Grace discovered something disturbing. Hidden inside his old teaching books, volumes he treasured like sacred texts, were thick bundles of cash. Money she'd never seen before. "Caroline," Grace called softly, "do you know anything about this money?" Caroline's eyes flashed with panic before she recovered. "Oh, that's Papa Moses's savings. He asked me to keep it safe from thieves." But Grace had managed their finances for 20 years. This money didn't belong to them. Where had it come from? And why was Caroline hiding it? Grace chose silence over confrontation, but her eyes became cameras, recording every suspicious move. The children, sensing their mother's distress, began their own quiet rebellion. Salt in Caroline's tea. Pepper in her face powder. Small pranks designed to make life unbearable. "Your children are wild animals," Caroline complained to Moses. They have no respect. Moses turned his frustration on Grace. You've failed as a mother. Look what you've raised, disrespectful brats who can't accept change. The words cut deep. Grace had sacrificed everything for this family, and now she was being blamed for their pain. But Caroline's behavior grew stranger by the day. She disappeared for hours without explanation. Phone calls ended abruptly when family members entered the room. And late at night, when everyone was supposed to be sleeping, Grace heard footsteps on the compound. One moonless night, Grace peeked through her window and saw Caroline's silhouette slipping through the gate. Where was she going at midnight? And why the secrecy? The next morning, Caroline acted as if nothing had happened, serving Moses breakfast with theatrical devotion. "My lord, I made your favorite porridge," she cooed, but Grace noticed her hands shaking slightly. Something was happening under their roof. Something dangerous. Caroline was a master performer. In public, she danced for Moses at community gatherings, calling him "my king" and "my protector." Neighbors praised him for finding such a devoted young wife. "Teacher Moses is so blessed," they whispered. "See how she worships him." But behind closed doors, Caroline's mask slipped. She called Grace "old cargo" and referred to the children as bush animals who needed to be tamed. "This house stinks of poverty," she muttered while cleaning. "These people have no class, no refinement." Victoria overheard and ran to tell David, but when they confronted their father, he dismissed their concerns. "You're jealous," Moses declared. "Caroline brings joy to this house. You bring only complaints." One evening, as Caroline insulted Grace's cooking loudly enough to wake the neighbors, Moses walked past the kitchen door. He heard fragments, "useless woman, can't even," but instead of investigating, he quickened his pace and disappeared into his study. Deep down, Moses knew something was wrong. But pride and infatuation had made him deaf to truth and blind to deception. Caroline smiled when she saw him hurry away. The old fool was exactly where she wanted him, trapped by his own ego and desires. The family was crumbling, and she was the architect of its destruction. Desperation breeds unity. Grace's children, who often quarreled among themselves, formed an unprecedented alliance. Their mother was suffering, their father was lost, and their home was being destroyed by an intruder. "We need evidence," David whispered during their secret meeting in the backyard. "Real proof that Papa can't ignore." Victoria nodded grimly. "I'll watch her during the day. You follow her at night." Even little Emmanuel contributed, reporting Caroline's phone conversations in his innocent, childlike manner. Their breakthrough came on market day. While Grace was selling vegetables and Moses was teaching, the children followed Caroline through the busy streets. She moved with purpose, checking over her shoulder constantly. At the far end of the market, near the palm wine cellars, Caroline met a man. Tall, well-dressed, with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. They spoke in hushed tones, laughing like old lovers. The man handed Caroline an envelope thick with cash. She counted it quickly, then kissed him on the cheek. "Soon, my darling," she whispered loud enough for David to hear. "Very soon, everything will belong to us." The children watched in shock as Caroline and the stranger embraced passionately. This wasn't just about money, it was about betrayal at the deepest level. They had found their evidence, but would Papa Moses believe them? Armed with what they'd witnessed, the children rushed home to confront their father. But Moses's response shattered their hopes completely. "You're lying," he roared, his face twisted with rage. "Caroline loves me. She would never betray me." David tried to explain what they'd seen at the market, but Moses wouldn't listen. "You're jealous children spreading wicked rumors about an innocent woman." The situation grew worse when Moses's teaching colleagues began gossiping. Word spread quickly through the small community about Teacher Moses and his beautiful young wife. Some admired him, others mocked him behind his back. "The old man thinks he's won a prize," they whispered. But everyone can see she's using him. Moses heard the whispers and became more protective of Caroline, more suspicious of his own family. Love, or what he thought was love, had made him blind to obvious truths. But David wasn't finished investigating. Using his father's old school records, he made a shocking discovery. The man Caroline had met at the market wasn't a stranger at all. His name was Victor, Moses's former student from 15 years ago. The boy Moses had helped through difficult times, whose school fees Moses had sometimes paid from his own pocket. Now Victor was plotting to destroy his former teacher, using Caroline as his weapon. The betrayal ran deeper than anyone had imagined. The stress of watching her family disintegrate finally caught up with Grace. She collapsed one morning while preparing breakfast, her body giving way to months of emotional torment. "Mama! Mama!" Emmanuel screamed, finding her unconscious on the kitchen floor. The children gathered around their mother, panic filling their young hearts. She had been their anchor, their source of strength. Now she lay pale and weak, barely able to speak. Moses glanced at his wife with casual indifference. "She's pretending," he told Caroline. "Grace always dramatizes everything for sympathy." Caroline smiled sweetly. "Don't worry, Papa. I'll take care of her. I know about herbs and healing." But the children noticed something troubling. Whenever Caroline prepared Grace's medicine, she added drops from a small bottle she kept hidden in her belongings. After taking Caroline's healing mixture, Grace became weaker instead of stronger. Victoria watched carefully one afternoon and saw Caroline mixing the mysterious liquid into her mother's tea. "What is that?" Victoria demanded. Caroline's eyes flashed dangerously. "Medicine, you foolish child. Your mother is very sick. This will help her sleep and recover." But Grace's condition continued deteriorating. She couldn't keep food down, her hands trembled constantly, and strange rashes appeared on her skin. The children realized with horror that Caroline wasn't healing their mother. She was slowly poisoning her. Victoria could no longer stay silent. That evening, while Moses was at a teachers' meeting, she confronted Caroline directly. "I know what you're doing to my mother," Victoria said, her young voice steady with determination. "You're poisoning her." Caroline laughed, a cold sound that chilled the air. "Prove it, little girl. Who do you think your father will believe, his beloved wife or a jealous daughter? I'll tell him everything. About the man at the market, about the money, about what you're doing to Mama." Caroline's expression turned deadly serious. She grabbed Victoria's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Listen to me carefully, bush animal. If you say one word, one single word, your precious papa will throw you out of this house. He loves me now. He trusts me completely. You are nothing but noise to him." Victoria tried to pull away, but Caroline's grip tightened. "Besides," Caroline whispered, "accidents happen to children who talk too much. Your mother's illness could spread to the whole family." At that moment, footsteps echoed outside. Moses had returned early from his meeting. "What's happening here?" he asked, standing in the doorway. Caroline immediately released Victoria and burst into tears. "Oh Papa! She attacked me. She said terrible things about me." Victoria looked at her father desperately, knowing this was her moment to reveal the truth. But would he believe her, or Caroline? Moses's hand struck Victoria's cheek with a sound that echoed through the house like a gunshot. The teenage girl stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face. "How dare you attack my wife?" Moses roared. "How dare you spread lies about her?" David and Emmanuel rushed to their sister's side, their eyes filled with tears and disbelief. Their father, their protector, had chosen a stranger over his own child. "Papa, please listen," David pleaded. "Victoria is telling the truth. Caroline is." "Enough!" Moses shouted. "I don't want to hear another word from any of you. Grace, despite her weakness, managed to rise from her bed and enter the living room. She saw her daughter's tear-stained face and her husband's twisted expression of rage. "Moses," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of 20 years of marriage. "A home divided against itself cannot stand. When you turn against your own children, you destroy everything we've built together." Moses ignored her words, helping Caroline to her feet with exaggerated tenderness. But that night, unable to sleep, Moses wandered into the kitchen for water. Caroline's purse lay open on the table, and her phone screen glowed with an incoming message. Moses glanced at it without thinking, then froze. "The old fool signed the papers today. Soon the land will be transferred. Phase 2 complete. Can't wait to be done with this disgusting family." With trembling hands, Moses opened Caroline's phone. Message after message revealed the horrifying truth. Plans to steal his property. Discussions about poisoning Grace. Mockery of his love and devotion. Everything his family had tried to tell him was true. Dawn broke gray and heavy as Moses sat in his study, Caroline's phone in his hands, reading message after message that destroyed his world. Each word was a dagger to his heart, each laugh emoji a mockery of his foolishness. He had lost everything, his family's trust, his dignity, his peace, for a woman who saw him as nothing more than prey. Moses walked into the living room where Caroline was humming while preparing breakfast. The sight of her pretending to be a loving wife filled him with rage. "Caroline," he said quietly. She turned with her practiced smile. "Good morning, my lord. I made your." "Explain this." Moses held up the phone. Caroline's face went pale, but she quickly recovered. "Papa, I don't understand." "What are you talking about?" "The messages, Caroline. All of them. The plans to steal my land. The poison you've been giving my wife. The man you meet at the market." Caroline's mask finally cracked. For a moment, her true face showed, cold, calculating, without a trace of the love she'd pretended to feel. Then she dropped to her knees, tears flowing like a river. "Papa, forgive me. I was confused. That man was blackmailing me. I had to pretend to love him or he would hurt you." Moses stared at her performance with disgust. How had he been so blind? Suddenly, the front door burst open. Victor strode in confidently, then stopped when he saw Moses holding the phone. "Caro!" Victor shouted, panic in his voice. "Time is up. The buyers are waiting for the land documents." Caroline's sobbing stopped instantly. She looked between Moses and Victor, realizing her game was finally over. Victor's entrance shattered any remaining illusions. Moses stood face to face with his former student. The boy he had mentored, encouraged, and helped through poverty. "Victor," Moses said quietly. "I paid your school fees when your parents couldn't. I gave you books, food, hope. This is how you repay me." Victor showed no shame. "Old man, you were always naive. Caroline and I have been planning this for months. Your land is worth millions, and you're too stupid to realize it." Caroline stood up slowly, all pretense of tears gone. "It was so easy, Moses. You were so desperate for a young woman's attention, so hungry to feel important again." The cruel laughter that followed broke something inside Moses. He collapsed into his chair, the weight of his foolishness crushing his spirit. Grace appeared in the doorway, supported by her children. Though weak from months of poisoning, she looked at her husband with compassion rather than anger. "Moses," she said softly. "Come back to us. We're still your family." Caroline sneered. "Family? This pathetic old woman and her bush children? You chose me, Moses. You chose." "Get out," Moses whispered. "What? Get out." Moses roared with a strength that surprised everyone. "Both of you. Out of my house. Out of my life. Victor grabbed Caroline's arm. "We're leaving anyway. Enjoy your poverty, old man." As they walked toward the door, Caroline turned back one final time. "You'll regret this, Moses. You had a chance to be with a real woman, but you chose this dying old." David stepped forward, blocking her path. "The only thing dying here was our father's wisdom. But it's alive again now." Caroline and Victor left in defeat, their scheme exposed, their greed unrewarded. Moses looked at his family, his wife, pale but forgiving, his children, hurt but hopeful. He had nearly lost everything for a beautiful lie. "Grace," he whispered. "Can you forgive a foolish old man?" Grace smiled weakly. "Moses, I forgave you before you even asked. But there's one condition for rebuilding our trust." "Anything." "Promise me, promise us all, that this family comes first. Always. No matter what temptation appears at our door." Moses knelt before his wife and children, tears of genuine repentance flowing down his weathered cheeks. "I promise," he said. "I promise." Family is the true backbone of any home. When pride blinds the head of the house, danger enters easily through the cracks of vanity and foolish desire. Love, trust, and unity must be protected above all else, for they are more precious than gold and more lasting than beauty. Greed and deception may shine brightly for a moment, like fool's gold in the sunlight, but truth always wins in the end. Those who seek to destroy families through manipulation and betrayal will find that their schemes crumble like sand castles before the tide. The strongest homes are not built on passion or desire, but on commitment, respect, and the unshakable bond between those who choose to stand together through every storm. In the end, Teacher Moses learned that wisdom comes not from books alone, but from treasuring what is real over what merely glitters.